Hey traders, it's John Fortune here with this week's weekly Forex forecast for the 28th of May to the 1st of June 2018. As always, we're going to start with the US dollar index and oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. And we're also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're looking for in this coming week and also in the weeks ahead. So without further ado, let's jump over to the charts and see where the money is this week. As always, starting with the US dollar index. Now, last week we actually came and took out the target at the 94.22 in the dollar index to the upside. And we sit right at, you can see we're actually at 94.25. We sit right at that target that we had from last week. So very simply put, going into this week, we are above the key area of broken resistance at the 93.69. It has already turned support over here, but if we can get a pullback into this area, this again is going to be a great place to look for bullish formations and patterns. And whether you trade the US dollar index or you just use it as a compass for other markets, anywhere in this area, if we start to see bullish formations and patterns, this is going to be a great indication where we're going to start to see moves to the upside. And you see we actually have quite a distance now between the next key area of resistance to the upside, 95.15. This was the second target from last week. So we are sitting above the key area of broken resistance, turning support in the US dollar index. We may see a little bit of correction first, preferably even retesting this broken resistance, turn support once again, before we look for continuations to the upside in the dollar index. Next, we have oil. Now, last week we were actually looking for longs up towards the key target to the upside, 73.32. You see we came very, very close to this area and we turned over and we actually broke back down below support and we had a very hard sell-off in oil. Now, very simply put, going into this week, we are looking for further declines in oil. However, you can see with such a sell-off, we do need a correction to take place. So if we can get a correction somewhere in this area around the 69 handle, or possibly and preferably if we can get a pullback all the way up to test broken support, turning resistance, this is going to be a great place to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking down towards the next target, next key area of support to the downside in oil at the 66.65. You can see we're coming quite close as we are, so we do need that correction first in order to get some nice risk to reward on this opportunity next week. So the first pair we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now, last week, euro dollar took out the target set to the downside at 1.17227, and it's making its way now down towards target 2 set from last week, and the next key area of support to the downside of the 1.16164. So very simply put, if we get a pullback somewhere in this area, preferably even a retest of broken support turning resistance to the 1.17540, although we may only get, let's say, up to the 1.700 handle. But if we get a pullback somewhere in this area, as I say, preferably a retest of broken support turning resistance, this is going to be a great place to start once again to look for bearish formations and patterns. And if we get the right kind of bearish formations and patterns in this area, we're going to be looking to initiate shorts once again in the euro dollar down towards target 2 set from last week at the 1.16164. And if we can get a break through here, this is a great place to again look for bearish formations and patterns down for target 2 and the next key area of support to the downside at the 1.15550. Next, we have pound dollar. Now, last week we came down, took out the target set from last week at the 1.3401, and we're now sitting very, very close to target 2 set from last week at the 1.3272. So very simply put, for anybody not involved in last week, if we're going to get secondary positions or a new entry in this, we would first of all need to get that risk to reward. So we'd need a pullback, possibly to the 1.3400 handle, but preferably if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken support turning resistance. This would once again be a great place to look to initiate shorts down towards the target 2 set from last week and next key area of support to the downside at 1.3272. And if we get a break through here, or perhaps if we get a break straight through here without getting a pullback first, this is once again another great place to start to look for bearish formations and patterns for a trade to initiate shorts down towards the target set here and the next key area of support to the downside at the 1.3041. Next, we have US dollar yen. Now, despite the fact that we have a strong dollar, we actually start the week in US dollar yen below broken support. And so very simply, we are looking as we start the week below the technical support area of the broken 110.034. If we get a pullback into this area, anywhere in this area would be a great place to start to look tentatively for bearish formations and patterns. looking to initiate shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at the 108.364. Now, someone might say, well, if the US dollar index is going to go up, why would you look for shorts? Well, the US dollar index is pretty much in this area like this. So if we get a pullback in the US dollar index first, we could see that pullback, that weakening of the dollar index actually manifesting itself into this trade down here in the US dollar yen. Or if we start to get a pullback in the dollar, even if there's a little bit of strength in the dollar, if the US dollar yen is actually stronger and the US dollar and the yen are paired together, you will still see declines. So because the dollar is strong, there is a risk of this getting a bit choppy, but the opportunity we'll be looking for going into next week is if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken support turning resistance to the 110.034, looking to initiate shorts down towards the target at the 108.364. Next, we have Aussie dollar. Now, last week, the Aussie dollar really didn't do a huge amount. I mean, because the Aussie has been, although the dollar's been strong, the Aussie has also been fairly strong. And as a result, these have hardly really moved since last week. So very simply put, we are looking for further declines in the Aussie dollar overall as we have a stronger US dollar. If we can get a pullback, preferably if we can get a pullback all the way up to test broken support turning resistance at 0.76458, this would be a great place to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And as we've broken above the resistance in the US dollar index, if we do get that correction back into testing resistance and support, we could see this pull all the way back up into this area. But anywhere in this area, preferably, as I say, a retest of broken support turning resistance, this will provide a great place to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking down towards the first key area of support to the downside and the target set, the 0.76458. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2 at the 0.73333. Next, we have New Zealand dollar. Now, New Zealand dollar was another pair that didn't really go very far last week because we did have a little bit of strength in New Zealand as we did also in the dollar. So we had this kind of choppy, kind of sideways movement. We are still ultimately looking for further declines in the New Zealand. If we can get a pullback, preferably if we can get a pullback all the way to retest broken support turning resistance at 0.69810, that would be a fantastic place to start to once again look for bearish formations and patterns. And if we start to get this kind of price action, we get a pullback into this area, we're going to be looking to initiate shorts down towards the first target and the first key area of support to the downside at 0.68180. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking down towards target 2 and the next key area of support to the downside, the 0.67810. Next, we have US dollar franc. Now, we start the week below the key area of broken support, and you can see turning resistance over here at the 0.99572. We've started to push down. So very simply put, if we get a pullback into this area, preferably if we can get another retest of broken support turning resistance, this would be a great place to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. We'll be looking next week down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 1 at the 0.98439. Now again, we are looking for further advances overall in the US dollar index, and so this may be a slightly riskier trade. However, as we said with the US dollar Japanese yen, if we start to get a correction and a weakening of the US dollar index first, especially if we start to see New Zealand and Aussie, for example, pulling back to previous broken support turning resistance as well, and we get these kind of movements, this is when we could start to see this trade to the downside materialize. So as we start the week below broken support turning resistance at 0.99572, we're only going to be looking for short opportunities below this level. Next, we have US dollar CAD. Now, we've been talking about this range. We've been in the US dollar CAD now for a week or so, and we had another move down. We said as we started the week below the top of the range that we were looking initially perhaps for a bit of a pullback and then a bounce to the upside and maybe even one more, but we were ultimately looking for a breakout, okay, of the top of the range for a continuation to the upside. And you can see we did actually have this last week. So very simply put, if we get a pullback and a retest of broken resistance turning support at the 1.29085, this is going to be a great place to start to look for bullish formations and patterns. And if we get those bullish formations and patterns, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 1 at the 1.31119. And finally, we have gold. Now, last week, we were looking for a pullback in this area, preferably a retest of broken support turning resistance at the 1304 0.25, which is exactly what we've got. And now we've had this pullback into broken support, turning resistance. This is a great place to start to look for bearish formations and patterns. And we had this spike to the upside and this push into broken support, turning resistance last week off of the back of the news that the summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump had been cancelled. And we saw this flight to safety in gold, and this pushed it back up towards the broken support, and it is now acting as resistance. This was also the same reason that we saw a strengthen in the Japanese yen last week, and we may, which is also a safe haven asset, and we may also see a little bit of strength in Japanese yen following through from that last week. But either way, sitting right in this area, this is now a great place to start to look once again for bearish formations and patterns. And if we get a break to the downside, first of all, especially through the lows down here, we're going to be looking all the way down to the next key area of support as highlighted from last week in the target set at the 1334.88. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A huge thank you to all of you who do that on a regular basis, and a big thank you to those of you who have subscribed to the channel so far. I hope, as always, you have a fantastic weekend, and I hope you all have a profitable week next week. The only thing left to say is take care and don't forget to trade safely.